Howdy folks, Jamboree here. Today I'm going to be doing a Patron request review of Pixar's Brave. Do I still think that it belongs on the worst Pixar movies list, or have I changed my mind? Let's find out. Merida is a free-spirited princess with an impressive knack for archery and a love for the wild outdoors. However, her strict mother, Queen Eleanor, insists that her royal daughter picks a suitor so that peace can be held between all the local clans. Desperate to escape a forced betrothal, Merida gives her mum a witch-baked cake and the queen turns into a bear. Now, mother and daughter must put aside their squabbles and work together to end this curse, as well as defeat Moru, a selfish prince who's been fully consumed by the same spell. There is something compelling about the idea for this film, the story of how an ancient toxic family tradition has decayed the core of a mother and daughter's relationship, all against the backdrop of a war-looming Scottish Highland kingdom. It's the kind of fairy tale setup that can spark deep questions about freedom versus responsibility and fate versus destiny. I mean, this is not a simple black and white situation. In concept, it's about a princess who is at an age when freedom and independence is everything to her, but she's unfairly inherited a toxic ancestral tradition from a mother who mistakes her overbearing parenting for privilege, and the legend of a rebellious evil prince for a lesson on the dangers of individuality and independence. So we have two fiery and strong female characters crossing swords as stubborn mother and daughter, with one being a brash and impulsive teenager who wants a quick and easy solution to a complicated and sensitive political strife, and the other being a control-freak parent who has experienced the same oppressive traditions and generational trauma, but would rather uphold said terrible peacekeeping strategy over actively finding any alternatives whatsoever.
I would advise you to make your peace with this. The clans are coming to present their suitors.
It's not fair.
However, a lightbulb movie idea is only as bright as its execution, and Brave is, quite frankly, very anticlimactic in action. Sure, the film has a very attractive vision of Scotland, a take on the Caledonian landscape that paints the Highlands with gorgeous lush detail and natural beauty. Audiences are bound to feel a sense of awe and wonder over every background in the film, and the artist team deserve all the credit for their hard work. However, it's obvious that Pixar's research on Scotland started and ended with aesthetic inspiration, despite the director's apparent Scottish heritage, because historians have criticised this film for leaning into a more romanticised version of medieval Scotland's culture and fashion. It's like Brave Scotland is a Hollywood-filtered hodgepodge of different Scottish regions and historical periods, so there's this sense of inauthenticity to the movie's love letter to Scotland, plus Brave serves as yet another example of Disney's habit of tokenizing melting pot countries. Sure, this is an inoffensive and harmless take on period Scotland that's very unlikely to insult the average Scot, but it's still valid to call out Disney for culturally stereotyping yet again.
Boys, you're not. Don't just play with your haggis.
Now, you might argue that this is supposed to be a magical version of Scotland, which is true. Unfortunately though, I wouldn't say that Pixar nailed this angle either. You see, when director Mark Andrews was brought on board, he wanted to dilute the magical aspects of Brave, because he found them to be too excessive. The end result is a Disney fairy tale movie that's been drained of a lot of its whimsy and enchantment. Sure, there's still blatant fantasy ideas here and there, but that classic bedtime story magic feel just isn't present for me because of the desaturated color schemes and emphasis on heavy realism over dreamlike logic. Sure, a fairy tale movie can be gritty and bleak. I know many examples of that. But I wouldn't say that Brave is trying to be a full-on dark fairy tale. It's more of a fantasy comedy with a rather silly sense of humor that happens to get a bit scary or serious at some points. So, the moody realism isn't always in the film's favor and can actually hinder any intended magical charm. There is a reason why the film is so tonally confused, but I'll get to that later. Brave has also been criticized for its erroneous portrayal of Gaelic mythology. For example, how it depicts the Will-o-the-wisp as helpful creatures when they're supposed to be mischievous little devils in Scottish myth. Although some fans have defended this by theorizing that the wisps are the real villains of the film, because their paths frequently lead the characters towards danger, and Mordu's ghost turns out to be a wisp. Personally, I see these wisps' intent as a tad too ambiguous, because it's like Pixar wanted to use them in the vein of cute Disney fairies who can lead our heroes the way or help them to find new info, but the studio also sees them as useful tools for the film's theme of unquestioningly following fate's dangerous path. Pixar have said that they were trying to be true to the mythology, and director Mark Andrews did admit that he wanted them to be morally vague. But what we're given in the end film is more baffling than excitingly mysterious. I can understand fans having harmless fun working out these wisps' motives, but I just found it to be a confusing take on an already developed myth, which, by the way, was actually inspired by a real-life scientific phenomenon. Need her? Questionable mythology and culture depictions aside though, what about the core of this movie, the mother-daughter drama? Well, like I said, we had the seeds for a promising story, but I can't say that Brave watered said seeds enough. Sure, these two have domestic squabbles that are very accurate to real, unhealthy and dysfunctional mother-daughter relationships. I mean, I have female friends with overbearing mums themselves, and Eleanor eerily resembles what these mates have told me.
I've just about had enough of you, lass.
You're the one that wants
You
me to...
embarrassed them. You embarrassed me.
I followed the rules.
You don't know what you've done.
At the same time though, the film doesn't paint Eleanor as a Gothel-tier villainess, but rather the product of a strict royal upbringing and a once nurturing mother who's become poisoned by the responsibility of a problematic tradition. However, the film lets this hostile aspect of Eleanor and Merida's relationship dominate the movie. Whenever I look back at this film, all I remember are these two bickering relentlessly, which I really doubt is what Pixar wanted. As realistic as these fights are, there's only so many that we need to watch until we get the picture. Saying that though, once Eleanor transforms into a bear, the soap drama quarrels come to an end, and the film finally finds a new groove. That being, Bear Eleanor and the outdoorsy Merida bonding in the wild together. These scenes not only force the two to find a new way to healthily communicate, because Eleanor can now only speak bear, but we also get to watch these two embrace their wild sides. Eleanor, who has been repressing herself for years in the name of royal duty, tries to retain her queenly decorum, but it's not long until her animalistic senses push her to embrace a more free-spirited side. With the pressures of the kingdom now absent, Eleanor is granted the freedom to be her own woman, and break the rules that were instilled in her as a strictly raised princess. Oh, and this is all illustrated through some amazing character visuals that require the animators to get across every feeling or expression through beautiful or funny silent animal animation. At the same time though, Eleanor gets to see how Merida's nonconformity has actually given her skills and talents that the queen never learned herself. Because she's been cooped up in a kingdom for years, as Merida demonstrates a survival knack and mature independence that her mother failed to appreciate before. These scenes are honestly the cream of the crop. Sequences that both introduce a chance for these two to reconnect outside the context of politics or tradition, and push both characters to show other sides of themselves to each other. I could honestly watch these two trying to survive and communicate in the woods for the rest of the film. Unfortunately, Brave suffers from having a very rushed and squandered middle act. The scene I just described, that sadly doesn't last that long, and in its place are the remnants of a bigger adventure tale condensed down, as the film tries to cram in as many story beats as it can under a short time to simulate the idea of a middle part of a movie, with set beats having more emphasis on exposition dumping and quick thrills than any constructive relationship building. It's like the movie wants to get its middle act over and done with, so that it can reach the exciting finale faster, or while the first act got as much time as it wanted to let these two be passive-aggressive towards each other. You see, a lot of material was cut from this movie, which sure is pretty normal, because filmmakers need to experiment with what works and be prepared to delete any scenes that waste time or don't fit. However, sometimes deleted scenes don't deserve to be cut, and with Brave, I get the impression that the studio or director got carried away on the chopping floor. I tried to watch as many Brave deleted scenes as I could, and you know what? There is evidence of a longer movie here. A rather fascinating film that creatively tries to tell a story through changing weather and lets its mother-daughter journey home play out naturally. So yes, I do believe that we missed out on something better than we actually got. The film's frantic rush to get the middle act out of the way results in a heap of noticeable problems for the rest of the movie. It doesn't matter how hard the third act goes, it's still having to rely on a shallow Act 2 to carry its drama. Yeah, it's nice that Merida gets to show that she now understands the weight of a kingdom's politics and culture's legends, while a proud Eleanor finally ends a toxic arranged marriage tradition, but the middle act of this film never showed either character coming to any kind of epiphany. Sure, we got the building blocks for the relationship's potential to improve, but there's a lack of a big self-reflection or realization moment that most other Pixar movies frequently include to help their arcs pay off later.
Yes, I can!
No, you can't! You think you can do these things, but you can't, Nemo!
So this change of heart on both sides honestly feels right out of nowhere and woefully unearned. Sure, these two do demonstrate a change in the climax, but their arcs are missing a huge chunk in the movie, so I can't say that Eleanor's road to redemption or Merida's coming of age are actually believable. To be honest, the only consistently good thing in this movie is our villain, Moru, a terrifying, mortal and scarred bear, that strikes fear into our heroes as a mindless and bloodthirsty beast, while also hauntingly foreshadowing what the Queen might become. His every scene either raising audiences' pulses with his legitimate feral threat, or providing a metaphorical subtext for the movie's theme of the tragedy of fate. It's a real shame that the rest of the film isn't as well developed as its awesome antagonist.
Come on! I'll take you with my bare hands!
I think there's only one thing that sums up how Brave ended up the way it did, and that's
production hell.
You see, due to creative differences, director Brenda Chapman was let go by Disney during production and replaced by Mark Andrews. It's bad enough that Brenda, who came up with this personal female-led story in the first place, was replaced by a male director in an industry that was already notorious for mistreating or underpromoting women. But this sudden change of director also resulted in a movie that's all over the place tonally and narratively. When we watch Brave, we're basically seeing the remnants of Brenda Chapman's original fantastical vision being murkily mixed with Mark Andrews' darker, action-heavier, and more grounded vision for what he wanted Brave to be. Sure, Brenda herself was pleased with the movie when she eventually saw it, which is great for her, but I can't ignore how much of Brave's messy behind-the-scenes drama affected the end product. To conclude, Brave was bursting with compelling promise as a Gaelic mother-daughter folklore tale, but thanks to the House of Mouse's corporate interference, we ended up with two different Brave movies clashing against each other, and very poor pacing that leads to a unique problem for each act. Would I still put it on my worst Pixar movies list? Yeah, but not as low as 2 this time, because while I don't enjoy Brave, there's some modern Pixar movies that I dislike a bit more. Feel free to watch my other Pixar videos if you enjoyed this one. I've been Jamboree, cheerio folks.